Hi guys, happy Thursday. Today we're going to be reading chapter 5 of Beyond the Bright Sea. Alright. Ash didn't say I told you so, but he seemed quite pleased when I came home from school so soon after leaving. Not much of a school anyway, he said when he heard what happened. And he was right. Sometimes there were only 2 or 3 children on the islands, and Mr. Henderson, the schoolmaster, who was also a ship's pilot, often left them alone while he climbed the lookout hill to watch for ships that needed guiding through the graveyard, where hundreds of ships had gone down. It was hard to imagine that he taught his students anything they couldn't learn on their own. You don't need to go to school, Ash told me. Miss Maggie has already taught you your letters and numbers. If you're hungry enough, you'll learn to fish and farm. The rest is salt and pepper. But I liked salt and pepper, and I wanted to know more than I did. And I wanted answers to the questions that rose and ebbed and rose again, a tide of curiosity that was as much a part of my life as the sea. Questions like why I had a spot shaped like a feather on my cheek. Because you do, Miss Maggie told me one day as I helped her pull parsnips and catch carrots from her garden. When I persisted, she said that some people thought marks like mine were signs of wishes that hadn't come true. Whose wishes? I asked. Your mother's, she said gruffly, and then refused to say another word about it. When I asked her why my hair was curly, she said, because it is. And then when I pressed, she confessed that she didn't know. Perhaps it runs in your family, she said. But Ash doesn't have curly hair, I replied without thinking first. And then I realized what I'd said, and I didn't ask about my hair again. Mostly, my lessons with Miss Maggie were all business, and she especially had no answer to what I wanted to know most, like why someone had tied me into a leaky skiff and sent me adrift on the outgoing tide. Can't we find the doctors who ran the hospital on Pennaquis and ask if I came from there? I asked her. She shook her head. I already wrote to the hospital when you were a baby, but no one ever answered. I'm sure they would have replied if they'd known anything. And if they knew that someone on Pennaquis had sent a newborn baby out to sea, don't you think they would have come looking for you? To which I had no answer except to ask another question. What about the lepers? What about them? Can't we ask them about me? I don't know where they went after Pennaquis Crow, she sighed. Just somewhere south. And besides, if someone sent you away in secret, why would they say so now? And who else would know about it? A real serious important secret isn't something you uncover without a lot of digging. So let's start digging, I said, although I was more eager now to know where I hadn't come from than where I had. If I could prove I wasn't from Pennaquis, people would have to stop treating me like a leper. Surely, then they would shake my hand, too. Why do you think they left Pennaquis? I asked Miss Maggie. She shrugged. It's bad enough to be sick. Worse that people don't want to have anything to do with you. Worse still to be locked away on a cold, bare island. I'm sure it was too hard to live out there, for the patients and the doctors both. It made sense for them to go to a warmer place. So I'll never be able to ask them? Ask them what? She said. Whether I came from Pennaquis? Never's a long time, she said. Maybe we'll find a way. When I asked Ash later that day, he said what he'd always said before. This is your home. You don't need another one. But I don't want another home, Ash. I just want to know where I came from, and whether I might turn into a leper someday. And what will that change? He said. I won't treat you any different. Miss Maggie won't treat you any different. But if it turns out I'm not from Pennaquis, other people will treat me different, I said, remembering the schoolmaster as he scoured the hand I'd touched. They'll have to. Ash was not so sure. You don't know that, he said, but why wouldn't they? Why does anyone do anything? He said. He sounded tired. Better to pay attention to your own self and leave their business to them. So I tried to do that. And I was, to my own surprise, largely successful. For a while I worked hard to concentrate on that, about Ash and Miss Maggie and me. I knew that Ash was as much as a castaway as I was, though he himself had done the casting. That he could paint a picture that was as real as what was real, only better. That he was stronger than 2 men, maybe 3, maybe 1,000. I knew that Miss Maggie was a castaway too, like Ash, by choice. She never said much about why she'd come to Cuttyhunk, only that she'd been born on a farm, raised on a farm, married to a farmer somewhere far from the sea, and that she had lost it all. And I knew quite about myself as well. No, not everything. Nobody knows everything, Ash often said to me, especially when they're young. So I concentrated on that too, learning what I could about the things right in front of me, like lobstering and shepherding and the constellations riding the night sky. I hiked up Lookout Hill, where a surfman kept post in a tiny station house, scanning the horizon with a long glass, watching for ships in trouble as they came through the graveyard, where Vineyard Sound and Buzzards Bay met in a dangerous and wild dance. And I learned a lot about danger that way. I learned how to pull ticks from Miss Maggie's flock and bathe the sheep and wash pond before the shearing. And I learned to shear by practicing on the lambs. Their pink and tender skin taught me how to be more careful than I'd ever been. I read a dozen new books, like The Secret Garden, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, books that rang bells in my heart. And I devoted myself to my lessons with Miss Maggie, who taught me things like why salt water boiled faster than fresh, why the French had given us the Statue of Liberty, why Mr. Lincoln's face graced every penny. And for some time, the sack I carried felt lighter. Sometimes I even forgot that I was carrying it. But it felt by now like a part of me, and I found that I couldn't put it aside, not completely. Nor did I ever stop watching for signs that I might be on my way to ill. For a whole year, I didn't see much, a winter cold, poison ivy when I was careless about where I walked, garden variety aches and pains, but then, shortly after I turned 11, I was the only one on the islands to come down with influenza. At least that's what Miss Maggie said it was. "You shouldn't come near me," I said as I lay in bed, my bones sore, my lips so chapped they bled, "in case it's not the flu." "Oh, fiddle," Miss Maggie said. "It's flu, plain and simple." She took my temperature by kissing me lightly on the forehead, as if I were as clean and safe as a tea kettle. But I was sure that neither she nor Ash told anyone else that I was sick again. And all three of us smiled more than usual on the day when I woke up well. All right, so for chapter 5, I want you to tell me one thing that Crow learned with Ash and Miss Maggie that she did not or would not learn at school. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday. I will see you tomorrow. Good night, Adams.